So now we have the time to reflect a little bit on the breakout sessions that you just had. So let's start with Hannah Attar. Hannah, please speak in English.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm just waiting that the screen is shared, or should I just start?
Hannah, we cannot hear you yet.
Okay. Can you hear me? No? Can you not hear me?
Ich kann nichts hören.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, now, perfect.
Okay, good. Okay. I was just wondering if the screen is going to be shared, or should I share my screen for my...
It's shared already. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, because I cannot see it, but okay. Then, yes, we had a very interesting discussion with Mays Al-Hamri and Ruwaida Abdallah. Mays is living in Germany, in Halle, and Ruwaida is living in Turkey, in Urfa. And like the main points out of the discussion were like women in Germany and Turkey are having kind of similar struggles, and especially Mays described it very well, that women are having the struggles within their own family because they need to fight, like they're mainly staying at home, but they are willing to learn the language. But like from the law, it's only allowed that one person is having the language course in the morning, the other person or the other parent in the afternoon, and like from the ways of family are structured, men are going in the morning and women don't have the chance to go in the afternoon because they are taking care of the children, so they are in a way isolated and don't have the power to go out because like they're mainly taking care of the children. She emphasized that this is not the case for every woman, but like for some of them. On the other side, they have a big struggle within the society. They are suffering racism, especially, she emphasized that especially women wearing hijab are suffering discrimination and racism. And this makes it very difficult for them, especially with respect to the integration. Like on the one side, the society wants refugees to be integrated. On the other side, it's very difficult to integrate if they suffer discrimination and racism and they are not having the chance to get in. This is the same for Turkey. Even though the discrimination is different because it's not mainly because of the hijab, it's more about being a Syrian woman. And in both countries, it's difficult to have contact to Germans and to Turks. And this is also what they are like complaining and criticizing. Then another point of the discussion is the mental health support, which is very difficult for the woman, because if they go to someone, they don't have the religious or the cultural background which is needed to understand their situations, and there are not enough fundings for translation. One like not very good thing, but still a good thing that was said is that women are isolated. It's true, but they see that they are not as much as isolated than men, because women have the power and energy to go to women groups, to interact with different women. They are supporting each other. There's different women projects. All these things, men are not having them, and also has to do with the backgrounds of the men, that they're not sharing feelings. They are like kind of too brave to talk about their feelings. So this is one thing they emphasized. Also, Roveda from Turkey said she met in Turkey a Syrian woman she would never have met in Syria. So this is good for supporting each other. And the main takeaways was that racism needs to be taken seriously, like the state has to do something about racism so that especially women have the chance to be part of the society. And then the state has to take care and make sure that women are able to join language courses, that there are enough capacities that they're able to learn the languages even though they have to take care of their children. And like for us, Germans and Turkish, to always keep in mind that we are not keeping these women alone. This was emphasized that there are a lot of sayings and paroles saying, yeah, we are for integration, that we are welcoming them, but they are just words, nothing, there are no actions following. So they emphasize they really wish that the society would more interact with women and in general with the refugees. Like Mace gave the example, she knows women, Syrian women, they don't even know any German woman. And yeah, in general, more fundings are needed to empower women for the language courses, for what I said, the mental health supports, and so on. There were so many important and good points. I hope I get the most important ones. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Let's continue now with the legal perspective. Sama, please.
So hello, everyone. We had a really very interesting discussion. So we had on board Inga Mates from the German Red Cross, and Damla Çelik and Mehmet Altay Sevnic from the Turkish Red Crescent. So like, let's say about the legal situation. So I divided it into, or the discussion was divided basically into two parts. So the first part was about the situation in Germany. So the total number of Syrian asylum seekers in Germany are about 800,000. So in the beginning, or let's say before 2015 and up to 2015, the majority would get international protection or would get recognized as official asylum seekers. But starting from 2016, most are getting only temporary protection. And there is another problem, the duration of stay in the reception centers, it's really too long. So it can take up to 18 months, and for families with children up to 6 months. And this is only the theoretical limit, but like many people do like end up staying there much longer because the affordable housing is rare. And also like another challenge people are facing in Germany. So there is obligation to live in certain areas, even for recognized asylum seekers. And this obligation can last for like 3 years. And this might be limited for the state or municipality. And another big problem here is the suspension of the family reunification for people with subsidiary protection. And this can be possible, but only after very complicated bureaucratic process. Another big important point that's causing basically fear was the lift of the ban on deportations to Syria since late 2020 because of the political discussions that are also causing heated atmosphere and heated debate concerning the asylum seekers in general. So concerning the situation in Turkey, so Damla shared with us, according to law, there are people who get recognized as official refugees are interestingly only European, but as for non-Europeans, there are basically two protection status, the international protection status. People get referred to one of 62 so-called satellite cities, and they are obliged to stay and register there. The other status is the temporary protection status. So this was created especially for Syrians. As soon as it became clear there is no, like, let's say, soon solution for the Syrian crisis. So for the temporary protection status, there are no satellite cities and there are no interviews required, but obtaining the IDs can be challenging because many cities are stopping giving refugee IDs due to capacity issues. So because there are, like, the number of Syrian children is especially high, there is unfortunately also a challenge to access education. And so Altai shared with us information about the work permit and working conditions. So the work permit is limited only for a specific company or employer. And this is why many are not getting work permits, because the process can be complicated and the work permit can only be made online. And also due to additional costs, unfortunately, many work unregistered because of extra costs and complications on both employers and employees. So we had very informative presentation, and perhaps if you would like to get the full slides, this can be shared by the Al-Sharq. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. Let's continue now with the COVID pandemic. Yeah, the impact of that. Sandra Patek.
Sure. Good morning, guten Tag, marhaba, assalamu alaikum. So I will talk about outcomes of our discussion on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We had excellent speakers, Rabia Al-Sharq, who is a clinical psychologist, and Marlene Leisenheimer, a researcher from Germany. This was a discussion based on the studies that I have presented. First of all, we heard the extensive socioeconomic effects of COVID-19. We heard about exacerbated inequalities across different domains, from work, education, health. In health, there were mentioned physical barriers, registration issues, language barriers that have exacerbated health inequalities, and even restricted access to COVID-19 tests. We also heard about, in Germany, that was from Marlene, that inequalities in access to digitalization. So we hear of this digital poverty in COVID-19 when we shifted working online, learning online. Some people have faced major difficulties in accessing these services online because of lack of access to internet and costs related to it. We heard about inadequate housing, and when perhaps social isolation was difficult, there was also an issue of limited access to hygiene items. We heard of profound mental health effects. They talked about, here mainly Rabia talked about psychological, relational effects, including emotional and cognitive consequences. In terms of relational, she mentioned issues around family dynamics and tensions, community relations and tensions. We talked about increased isolation and its effect on increased anxiety, irritability, and other effects of mental health nature, such as irritability, amnesia, decreased self-care, and so on. Rabia mentioned also a range of coping strategies. She highlighted an issue of religious coping, which proved to be one of the essential coping strategies among Syrian refugees in Turkey. It proved very effective, and it helped people to find meaning and relieve anxieties. She also talked about active coping, such as wearing masks and sanitation and all that. We heard of interpersonal conflict and family dynamics, an issue of increased domestic violence, and one of our participants mentioned issues of pre-existing issues, that COVID-19 has just exposed issues that have pre-existed COVID, meaning families maybe didn't know each other too well, and being forced to coexist 24 hours a day could increase tension in the family and between parents and children, and within and between spouses. Victims were said in Germany as less able to get help, and access to self-shelters was limited due to contact restrictions. Main takeaways. First, Marlene has has underlined the issues of interconnection between different domains. So progress in work, mental health, and education will have like associated effects. So we need to take positive measures to mitigate negative COVID-19 effects across different domains. In particular, there's a need for proactive action against discrimination and racism. We heard of the need to facilitate access to mental health services as essential. We heard of gender differences. So gender roles have affected perhaps women in higher degree than men, but not on. It's just not it's not generalized. But we heard of increased unpaid labor burden on women as frontline workers, as well as increased domestic work and so on. So to summarize, COVID-19 uncovered some previous issues and created new issues, exposed relational challenges in families. There are multiple new daily stresses, such as not being able to visit relatives and travel to Syria, limited contact with Turkish community that affect people's mental health and interrelated. Thank you for your attention.
Sandra, thank you so much. Yes, someone asked, we are currently running about 5 minutes late, but we have one last presentation on the issue of, is there a unified Syrian community in Germany and in Turkey? Sami, please.
Thank you, Leo. I will keep it as short as possible. I talked to two persons, so two individual perspectives. Saad, who's an artist and author living in Berlin, Germany, and Mohammed, who's a former English teacher, now psychology student, and works in several years for NGOs from East Turkey. So, and we talked about the structure of the Syrian community and the interaction between the Syrian communities with the majority society and how the communities are formed and how actually the life of the Syrian communities can be improved. So, and regarding the main question, which is the title of the breakout session. So Syria was some kind of melting pot before. So you have many different norms, religious backgrounds. You have Sunni people, Shia people, Christian people, Druzes, Alevites, and so on. So there wasn't even one community before. So before the war started, or there is no one community currently. So therefore, the answer from both Mohammed and Saad was the same. There are several Syrian communities in Turkey and Germany because it was the same in Syria. So they formed based on their norms, social backgrounds, and traditions. And this is something they wanted to point out. The society and this majority society must acknowledge and accept this diversity. Yeah? So you cannot treat every Syrian the same. Yeah. And in addition to that, they wanted to highlight and point out that within the Syrian communities, the people are lacking trust, and many of them have traumas and psychological issues. I mean, you heard about that a lot in the other in the main panel and the other breakout sessions. So you need to gain their trust. You need to rehabilitate them. What are their suggestions for improving the situation of the Syrian communities? What do you need to do? So first of all, they said you need to literate the people in terms of politics, civil society, women and children rights. This is something the people didn't know or didn't really live in Syria. So they don't, or they are overwhelmed by having many political parties, by gatherings, by initiatives, and so on. Civil society, they were not really teach about women and children rights. This is something new, and you need to educate and literate them in terms of that, and especially do this in their mother language so they can really understand it, process it, and develop these topics. And you need to activate the Syrian people, for the civil structures in the new country. Both of them pointed out the topic of civil engagement, voluntary work, which is in both societies something which is actively conducted by the majority society. Try to bring in the Syrian people for doing the same. So let them get in touch with the structures and let them be part of this civil engagement. And last but not least, so I think this is a good closing the loop to the other breakout session we had. They said you need to activate the women as change driver because they raise the children. This is something I would like to point out also from a personal perspective. as working for an NGO, also in our work, if we want to drive change, or we want to drive change in our work, you always have to put the women in the middle, because they are the change drivers. If you really want to break up something, improve something, put the woman in the middle. And yeah, I think this is a nice closing of the breakout sessions.
Sami, thank you so much. Well, then let's move on to the last discussion. But let me just announce one last thing before. Unfortunately, it seems like we won't have a video by Ahmed at this point due to connectivity issues. We tried a lot and he tried a lot as well, but it didn't work out yet. So unfortunately, we won't have the Turkish perspective on here today, but yeah, thank you. Then let's move to the last panel discussion, which is kind of looking for meaningful connectors between the offerings and the actual needs of refugees in Turkey and Germany. And let's start with an introduction round. It's a similar structure than in the first panel discussion today. So we'll have Nicola Klamt and Sabrina Schmelzer from the Zentrum Überleben first, who are presenting together as so they'll start. Please go ahead. You're muted.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So we are both colleagues from Zentrum Überleben. That's an NGO based in Berlin, and we offer psychosocial support, rehabilitation for refugees, for migrants with a story of experience of violence in wartime or survivors of torture. We are one of the 2 psychosocial centers in Berlin. The other one is Xenion. And maybe you remember the organization was founded in 1992 already under the name of Berliner Behandlungszentrum für Folteropfer, also Berlin Treatment Center for Torture Survivors. At that time in the context of the war on the Balkan and the emerging need for psychosocial support for those affected people. So I will hand over briefly to Nicola, who will give you an introduction in our departments at the center.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Nicola Klamt and I'm a psychological psychotherapist since 3 years at Zentrum Überleben. Yesterday in the breakout session, I already gave a brief, detailed overview about the center. And just from yesterday, I think there was a small misunderstanding in the translation. I just wanted to correct one thing, that we have mostly patients from Syria, then comes Afghanistan, then comes Iraq and Iran and so on. And nowadays we don't have anymore so much refugees from Chechnya. I just wanted to correct this a bit. And we have different departments. So we both work in the outpatient department for adults. Then we have the same outpatient department for children and adolescents, and then we have a housing community for female migrants, and we have the Berlin Network for Vulnerable Refugees in Need of Protection. And maybe in the discussion we will take also a closer view to this department because it has some interesting topics, I think. Then we have many other departments. We have a school where you can get a training in nursing and such stuff. And we have a big research department, which plays a role in developing also online tools for treating refugees. So, for example, they have developed an app, and they also have a full therapy program where you just need a computer access to get a therapy. So it's mainly for people who are speaking Arabic and not being in Germany, so not being able maybe to get a psychological therapy or something. And then we also have a special library, which gives us information on every topic surrounding trauma or torture or war-related violence or treatment. And yeah, overall,
we grow kind of bigger in the last years. And but also we see that the amount of people who needs psychological support, social support is also growing bigger since probably also a lot since 2015 also. I think, I don't know, this is enough for a small.
I think it's enough. What is maybe important is that we offer rather high threshold specialized services. We also have a day clinic for the more severely affected. And it's not like a low threshold access. So we really invite people for a first interview. Then we take a decision if they fit to our criteria of being survivors of torture or war traumatization, if they show symptoms of mental distress, such as PTSD symptoms or depression.
And therefore also the asylum status needs to be quite safe in a way, which is why we have a lot of Syrian refugees in treatment in a way through the subsidiary status. It's in a way more easy to do a trauma therapy instead with somebody who maybe faces deportation. So far from us, I think.
Thank you too. Let's continue with Maeve Elham.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am Maeve. I live in Halle. I come from Syria. I've been here for 6 years in Germany, and I work in an NGO called Multicultural Center, located in Halle, Magdeburg, and Dessau. And I work in a social work team and with women and with teenagers with migration background.
Yes, you can go on.
Talk more about more about my work here.
You have the chance to talk a few 5 minutes or something about your work and introduce it a little bit more in detail.
Yes. So the work that we're doing with migrant teenagers is in a project called Our Lives, and we try to address the different issues that are having, like integration, finding identities, religious identities. How can they cope with their families? They're changing faster. Usually, they are more adapting to new system, and the families sometimes they have the struggle of just mostly keeping them a little bit like in traditions or in old systems, and the teenagers wants to have a new life, of course, and they change faster. I would say there's also like a change of roles in families because they learn the language as well faster, and the parents a little bit slower, so they kind of it change out the power as well in the family. And we try to address such issues with them to empower them in their daily life, to support them to find their own ways in Germany. That's on one side. On the other side, I work as well with women in different empowerment projects. So it's kind of social support that we have women circles, we have some safe room that they meet on a weekly basis and do different activities. As what do they want? That's on one side, that they could also get to know each other more, and they can share problems and also solutions for things, and they can also form relationships so they feel more supported and they have networks. Or on the other side, I try my best to connect them to the services, because there's always this puzzle missing. How do the offers, how do the people that are doing things, how do they can be connected with the group that they want to work with? That's so it's like a bridge function or something. That's what we try to do.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, I think we have one. Yasin, the next speaker, is unfortunately not in the call at the moment, but we'll get back to him as soon as he joined. So we have the chance now to go into the discussion a little bit already. And one question that I'm really, one were like wondering about is the role of family members as potential connectors. How important are family members for in bridging or kind of in mental well-being for refugees in your experience and in your work?
Who wants to answer it? I don't know. Mais or as a social worker? What I can say is that family members are important for all of us. Of course, they're very important for the refugees as well. And one of the main issues is that many people are not together with their family members. They're not reunified. And this is one of the main stressors, I would say. I think we can agree on that. And yeah, with the subsidiarian status, which most Syrian refugees get in Germany, is very difficult, very bureaucratic to get their family members. Often the men, the fathers, they go ahead and have the ideas that they can bring their spouses, their children as soon as possible. But then the process takes months, sometimes years even. And I've seen people getting severely depressed because the family members are not there. So that's a big issue. And I mean, we all need our social network, our friends, our family to feel mentally healthy. So it's very important to have them around. Yeah? And many of the refugees don't have.
So can we kind of note that family members are an important connector that can often play an important role and often in many cases missing as a meaningful bridge in order to reach mental well-being.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, for sure. And on the other way, we see in a way we have many children treated in our children and youth department who are kind of, we call it Parentifizierung in German. So they take the role also of a parent because they sometimes learn the language much quicker in a way. They go to the school every day. And so they have to take, in a way, the role of their parents in everyday life, which is a huge stress factor for them also in their life. And they get grown up quite soon in a way. And for example, I have been with our NGO on a children travel with the children of our patients. We do this every year, and I could go with. And the children are perfect in German. It's kind of like mother tongue in a way, which is my respect for this to the children. But in a way, you see them coming to the offices, dealing with difficult stuff. So it's also a stress factor for the new generation then in a way. No?
I would also add that it is important. Exactly what you said, Sabrina, right?
Sabrina, yeah.
That it is like they are, and then they not only learn the language very fast, the children and youngs, but they also get into the culture and the mentality.
Yes.
And they really change. They really change from the parents. And then I think it's very important, the family members, but also the family work is very important.
Yes.
That we try to work on the family dynamics, which I see that even in the very well functioning families, when they are in this context of migration in Germany, they have so much now challenges with the children because of this the new challenges in the guest community, I would say. That's as well very important.
Yes. That's why we mostly install in the families like a family help or a single case help, no? And still, we are in a way in a luxurious position in Germany, although it doesn't feel like this a lot of times, but at least in Berlin, it's even more luxurious situation than probably being in Halle, because the networking structures are quite good. We have a lot of treatment possibilities in a way, although sometimes here even it doesn't feel like it. But even though you install family help or single case help through the, I don't know, government youth office or how you call it, it's still not enough in a way, no?
Yes, yes, because it misses this cultural aspect of it. There are not enough professionals working with the Jugendamt, youth.
Yeah.
Jugendamt.
There are not like enough professionals that are coming from different, like from a migrant backgrounds, that they could even like be active and work with these families, because the cultural understanding is missing, kind of.
Yeah. So I think it's two different issues. The parents, which come first, which feel guilty about not having brought their families or not being able to reunificate. And the second big issue is the difference between parents and kids in their speed of integration and change. And that also creates differences and problems.
And also for the parents, in a way, it has been like a forced migration, no?
Yes.
It's not that they choose, in a way, to come to Europe or to Turkey in a way, no? It's, in a way, you had to leave, and then also the parents are stressed in a way by seeing their own countries falling apart. If you check Syria, no? Like you have, I don't know, there are probably like not many doctors remaining in a way, or not many teachers are remaining, and so you have still your family members there, but the country is in a way falling apart. So it's definitely, in a way, it's a protection thing, the family, but in the other way, it's also a big stress factor. So it has both sides.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I also wanted to say. That a lot of my friends say they really wanted to get their parents here, and they got their parents here. And when they're here, they are happy that they're here, but at the same time, the stress that is just developing from having parents who are from now very different contexts, it's also big.
Yes.
Another factor that I was wondering about is in what way are the needs of different generations that you're working with. But I mean, you mentioned the parent generation, children as well. Like in what way are these the needs of these different age groups different in your opinion?
Can we see all of us?
We can't. Sorry, a technical question. Can we see all of us? Or is it not possible?
No, it's because we are in this small scale account, so we can't wait.
Okay. Sorry, I was just thinking easier for the communication. Who wants to answer?
Mace, do you want to?
Maybe.
If you have something to say, please.
Yes. So is there a difference in the generational needs, basically, between younger generation? And I mean, there's also another aspect, of course. I mean, are you, we know that trauma, for example, is kind of moving from one generation to another as well. I mean, how are kids maybe affected of people, refugees who have migrated to Germany, and you might work with them now as well. I don't know. But I think, I would like to find out more about how you see these different generational needs. And
Also, for us, for example, the parents who have to flee the country and maybe have experienced trauma, and they find the way to our center in a way, and they get a trauma therapy at our center. It's always that we are, for example, doing a children monitoring. So it's basically every 3 months in a way. And we also check the situation and the needs of their children, which is sometimes, of course, very difficult, as there is a lot of times the opinion if the youth department, youth office of the state, let's say, comes in, then they will lose their children, or they will take the children away, which is like a belief you really need to work on hard to destroy this belief in a way, so that the youth office can also offer some good help in a way. and there are many anxieties you have to deal with the, let's say, elderly generation or the parents in a way. So it's very important, besides therapy and so on, to give a good overview about how the society works, how structures work, what they will face in a way as, for example, also racism in everyday life and so on. So you need to give a good psychoeducation on these things in a way. And then the children, they are more having the need, as I see it, to have their time for their progress in a way, and for not being the second mother or father at home. So maybe you can.
I think the parents now, because I just work with parents, with the adults, as a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, a lot of them suffer a lot of what they have lost. Okay? One thing is the traumatic experiences they had during the war, or they have been in prison. But the other thing is the loss of status, the loss of everything they built up in their life. And this often leading to depression. I think that's a bit different to the kids, and also to change the cultural environment totally. I mean, when you're 50 years old, it's different, more difficult to change than if you're 15 or 10. It's a different phase of development of your psyche. But many of the older ones, the parents, they're very sad about what they lost. Okay? And it's more difficult for them to integrate, to learn the language, to learn something new, okay? To adapt. And they feel responsible also for the children. For example, if I'm imagining one of my clients, he feels very bad. He used to be a hard worker in his home country. He had 2 houses. He says he had 4 cars. He was well off. And now he can't even provide the simple thing like the housing for his family. So he says, we have 2 rooms with 4 children in a common shelter. And he really feels bad, depressed about not being also able to offer as a family father. Okay? What is his duty, especially in his culture? Okay? He's responsible for all of that. So this is more from the point of view from the father. Mike, I think if you want to,
do you want to add something?
Yes, I would say I see it exactly how you see it as well. And then if we want to say that the parents are overwhelmed, they are overwhelmed by this bureaucratic system and the posts they're getting, the things they have to do, until they really could do anything that bring them hope, anything, successes like language course or getting a job or practicum or anything, that they are on the way and the right way. This is also very overwhelming, and it's also, as you said, it's then difficult for them to this role of being a parent is a little bit different here. It's now not so, they don't feel so strong in this role, and they really need a lot of support in their role as parents.
Yes, I think what we are all missing in a way are interpreters. No, it's the big. Because the stress, also the after migration stress is all this, that you can't read your documents, that you would need like interpreters. And I think with this you could reduce the stress level quite a lot in a way.
Yeah. Mace, I mean, we touched upon that before a little bit as well. Like when we think about differences between small cities and medium-sized cities and bigger cities. What I think Zentrum Überleben is in Berlin, and you're in Halle. Like, how are the challenges and needs and also missing connectors different in your work in Halle compared to a larger city as Berlin?
I would say really in general, I see that there is in the migrant community a mental health crisis. It's really a crisis. I mean, we have clients that they don't speak German at all. And they have to be admitted to a psychiatry. But because also there is no support for translation. There's no funding for translator, for professional translator to be in the psychiatry with them. It's very difficult. And then we try, like in whole the state of Sachsen-Anhalt, there are no professionals who are Arabic speaking, for example. There are no professionals. And there's as well no funding for it. And there's in Halle only one center. It's called Psychosocial Support Center for Migrants. And they are really doing a great job, and they're getting like cut on the funding. They're just getting, and I don't get that. And they have a waiting list that is so long. You really need math to get in there because they have translators, kind of. And then we find ourselves calling Berlin, like most of the time, somewhere in Berlin, because we know that they have translators or they have professionals that speak the language. And still there, we don't get placed. And I know clients that we have for 2 years now. They could not get the help that they need. And I would say these are for the people who are aware that they need help, who are having like some kind of post-traumatic symptoms that it's keeping them from having a normal life. I think there's for a lot, but also like another problem for migrants, I would say, this psychological education, that they realize what does it mean to have therapy. It's also very important. There's a big stigma around it. They're stigmatized, and they think mostly they have the idea that you are crazy if you seek help. They even use the word crazy a lot if you seek help. So if you want to start, I would say that the crisis starts from the beginning, that there are not enough education on this, that you could actually get support. And mostly, of course, it's difficult, but that it is good as well to seek for support, maybe. This is also like something I find is really unfortunate. And also another also aspect of it, I feel like there's a lot of people, like the family members of people, that they have like psychosis or something that's very, for example, very extreme, I would say, that it's not kind of depression or like something that the family member is acting very different. This moment, they don't know what to do usually. They don't know where to go. They don't know if they can call the police or not. They don't know what can the police do. They are very overwhelmed with this, and they are actually, I heard a lot about cases, they're encountering this, and like there's a lot of families that encountering that they don't know what to do. So it's again about awareness. What can you do in Germany, and where can you get help on one side, and maybe, yeah, as well, like funding, because we don't have like good funding for services in the city where I live as well.
Yeah. Do you want to add something to that, Nicola?
Yeah, I mean, we have the German security system. No? You get a card in a way which allows you to get a therapy in a way, as every other member of this state in a way. But the reality is that then there is no translation, no? And that the psychotherapist, for example, if he or she wants to take somebody in therapy and can't do it in English, for example, this I have done with Syrian refugees in the past who were quite good educated, and we both could do the therapy in English in a way. But if not, then you need to pay a translator, and it's normally like it could be starting from, 50 euros to even 60, 80 euros, what the translator would get for the session. And in Germany, you get something around like 98 euros per session. So if you make your accounting, you can't pay the rent for the praxis if you treat refugees in a way, if you need to pay the interpreters. So basically, by law, everybody is kind of the same in a way. So everybody is equal. But if we see it in praxis, then there's a big gap between the people, because some can get therapy and some can't get due to language problems. No? And this is the gap we are trying to fill with the therapy in the center. But if we look at our numbers, no, we are treating like around 500 people per year. So it feels a lot, but in a way, if you see the numbers of people arriving here, it's not so much. No? And there is a big problem in a way. And in the last years, we had some developments of
this kind of apps where you can find help if you are in a struggle situation, and they work on smartphones, so it doesn't matter where you are, but it's a small scale help in a way. And then some are developing these online programs, of course, but still, also MICE told me that it's very difficult to apply there, and I know that they are also kind of full in a way. So,
it's a matter of, like you said, MICE. I think first there's quite a difference between the land, the countryside, and the city, the biggest city, but resources are still scarce, also limited in the big city. Also, it's much better. But how do we reach the people, or how do they reach the services? Well, I think first in the arrival centers, is there somebody to really clear people with mental health symptoms already, who are in need of some services? Then is there somebody to tell them where to go, where they could address? If they get some counseling, are there places to be offered at all? Are there resources? So it's I think one has to start from the very beginning, because as you say, Mace, people are not aware. They are worried to get a stamp of being crazy. They don't even know the symptoms, maybe, if they are really getting crazy, or if it's a symptom of post-traumatic stress. So it's important to let them know about the symptoms, but also to raise the awareness that there can be helpful, those symptoms, that there are normal reactions also to horrible things they went through. So the question is always where to reach the people, how to mediate to offers, and then how to create enough places. And always the narrow point, I think the needle eye, is the lack of language, also interpreters, the lack of translation. Yeah.
Before I would like to open the floor to questions from the audience. One announcement, I guess Asin will unfortunately not make it, so we'll have to excuse him for now. But another issue, and I mean, you really talked about that already, is this issue of stigma. And what could be ways for, trying to think positively to overcome this stigmatization? What could work? And maybe do you see progress already?
Would you like?
Sure.
Yes.
Nice. Go on.
The question is, how, because the internet was a little bit cutting.
Regarding stigmatization, what could be done, in order to effectively kind of work on destigmatization? What could work?
What could work effectively? Yeah. Part of it, like the job that we're doing, when I'm getting to know women, of course, it's recurrent that we get a lot of problems. I get a lot of that they're having nightmares, or they're having some fears, some anxieties. Somebody's not feeling well. You can see they're depressed. They are not coming to the meetings, and I can see that they are kind of suffering. There's this conversation going on that, okay, maybe what about I'm doing therapy, or the another person doing therapy, they are doing well. This organization maybe is getting a little bit money for translators. Maybe we can see the center. So we try to have this conversation with them that is like, it's normal. And I feel like after war and after all what happened in Syria, even in Syria, people are getting a little bit more open about it. Like a little bit. There's now a little, people are start saying, yeah, I'm doing therapy, kind of. Mm-hmm. And this you never heard before. I think now, so I would say partially is the social service. It's like a social work thing. People, even when they are like, as we said, this education should be provided in the Unterkunft where the refugees are, maybe, and also in the work with the youth center, with the families, inside them. Also, maybe the actors from the society themselves, from the refugee society or the migrant society, that some people who are very active, that they maybe bring the subject, I guess. But again, we say if they find a place, because even if we talked about it and then they don't find a place, that's really an issue. So I would say it's going to be even more difficult when we say they want to seek help and they don't find a place in Halle. I mean,
that's important aspect. Do you want to add something to that, Sabina? Or
I mean, stigma is an issue, I think, in all countries of the world. Stigma of mental illness, mental disorders. So I think anti-stigma campaigns concerning mental health should be done all over. Maybe in the media, more in the internet, in social media, reaching young people. This is not just about post-traumatic stress, it's about suicide, about psychosis. People know something, and I agree, they know increasingly, and it becomes less stigmatized, but it's still there. And I mean, having to leave your country or having experienced horrible violence is not a mental disorder. Sometimes we also make it. I think that's also important to tell the people that's also somehow normal to react to those horrific events.
And also it's about like being stigmatized as a victim, maybe in a way. And although you had a status in your country, what Sabina said before, like you had a job, you had a house, you had cars, whatever, and now you are stigmatized in a way as a refugee, as a victim, and this is something which definitely you need to talk about with the people. And for example, in Germany, there is this word like Flüchtlinge, which is something which is like, Linge is something we say to make something small or, I don't know, sweet or whatever. And it starts also by you in everyday life in a way to maybe the word like Geflüchtete, another word for refugees in a way is something which gives also more respect in a way, or instead of saying the word Flüchtlinge. So it also starts with small things and the explanation of these things to people who are living here.
First question from the audience that I'm asking you now. I'm asking another one afterwards. From Romia, to what extent is one problem that native Arabic-speaking therapists don't get their diplomas from their home countries recognized to provide therapy themselves? Is that a significant aspect or not? That is the question. Mace, maybe you want to...
I think Nicola and Sabrina know about this more than me, so I would ask you both to answer.
I'm not so sure about it. No, I just know that as being a psychotherapist in Germany, you have to go like a long way. So you have to finish psychology, and then afterwards comes a very expensive education, which you basically need to finance yourself in a way. So you need to either have rich parents or you take a credit. No, that's the reality. So, and we are talking about more than 20,000 euros. So I think this is kind of also already a barrier for people in a way. And then the recognition of the diplomas is a big thing in Germany, no? And we are a super bureaucratic country, so why should this be easy in our country? Of course, this is also super complicated here. And yeah, for sure. No? But also to be, I don't know so many people who have studied psychology in other countries in a way, so in countries like Syria or something. I think it's mostly the psychiatric point of view you take, and psychotherapy is something random in a way, as far as I know, but I'm happy to learn something new. So.
Yeah, for the doctors, it became a bit easier to get their certificates because we are in need of them. So of course it's very important that these bureaucratic processes are made as easy as possible. And the language issue, of course, is an issue. That high levels of German language are usually expected to get your certificate. So maybe that could also be another path, that we are in need of therapists who speak their mother tongue, of maybe psychiatrists or the social workers, as people who have been working somehow in the field of mental health in their home countries, that maybe even without the high level of German language, they would be allowed to get a certificate to practice, or to be a bit more flexible in it. It would be something good, definitely. But it's a bureaucratic
let's dig a bit deeper there. I mean, or to what extent is language really important as a factor in therapy? What is your experience there? Is it very important for the therapeutic experience that it's conducted in the native language, and in the case of Syria, probably also in the native dialect? Or is it sometimes even helpful to distance yourself linguistically from that? Yeah.
Should I answer it?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm a psychiatrist and also a psychotherapist, and in the center, I just work in English, German. As a German, we don't use, because all people come from abroad. So in English either, or I work with a translator. And I was surprised myself how well it actually works to work together with a translator, because I also get not just the words, the literal translation, I also get a bit of cultural translation, which I find very useful. So ideally, we have a short debriefing after each session, and we can discuss also a bit the cultural issues, maybe what was appropriate, what not, because I come with my German ideas. So I think the language issue can be solved with a good interpreter at your side, maybe coming from the same country, same cultural background. And we in our center, we try to have a pool of translators, which we also chain, which we know well, and a certain translator you can work with. So if we have good translators, trained translators, it works very well. The other thing is that you're a therapist coming from the same country. So you can speak in your mother tongue. Of course, that's ideal. Yeah, but that's not what we have so much. Of course, if we have some among the people coming, we should make their what they know. We should make it available, of course. Yeah, with reducing bureaucratic obstacles.
Yes.
I would like you to add something to this. I mean, I also know from the Syrian community that they are trying now to seek help online from therapists that are located in Lebanon or in Syria or somewhere. It's also kind of working, but some, for example, like, of course, we also in Syria, we have also our struggles with therapists and the whole idea of it, because like some therapists were like working with the security forces, or if you said something political, they could say that it was also difficult in Syria, or somewhere like religious, or somewhere sexist, or there was different struggles, and it was very difficult to find a therapist who's really good at their jobs, because it's not funded, it's not supported by the state. It was very difficult. Mostly they were people who studied abroad, and then they came back to Syria and they wanted to make a change. There were, but it was a little bit difficult. And now, like some of the people that I know, they are doing some online sessions with people like abroad. And of course, they are funding it themselves, so they have to pay for the sessions themselves, because it's not in Germany. So they need to be working and having the money, otherwise they cannot afford it. And because they are really in dire need, some are like getting therapy from like a therapist for children and youth, but not for who are like professionals with youth and children, but not for women, for example. But they need any kind of support.
What we also sometimes face, but it's not the common case, but I also have many patients who are distrusting, mistrusting any person with an, I don't know how to say political correct, but with an Arabic background in a way. So it's sometimes for some persons, especially if they had like trauma with torture and so on, it's sometimes more easy for them to open up within a person who is not from the same cultural background in a way. And also sometimes I have to change the translators, or I have to change to somebody who is, for example, studying Islamic studies or something, who is German but learned also Arabic. And sometimes with some people, they are so deep in their distrust, mistrust, that I need to change the setting also. That's also something which sometimes happens.
Yeah, good to have both in a way.
To what extent would you say that like cultural awareness is or intercultural awareness for context-specific therapy is already anchored strongly enough in psychotherapy in Germany? I mean, especially when it comes to education. Could you hear me?
Can you repeat it?
Yeah, I was. My question was related to kind of cultural specific aspects of psychotherapeutical training in Germany. Is that anchored strong enough in the education already, in the training, or is that something that should be improved?
Also, for like, it's definitely a big topic in also the education of getting a psychotherapist. For example, culture sensitivity and culture sensibility is a big topic. I think for therapy, it's always the case that you have a neutrality obligation, like you are committed to neutrality anyhow. It doesn't matter if the person in front of me is from Syria or, I don't know, from Saxon, whatever, like I'm supposed to be neutral. And if you work in this business, it's always about like questioning your own perceptions and your own self-produced barriers or your own biases, and to know about them. And I think the important thing for our work is to accept differences, to accept irritations, to accept ambiguities and contradictions, like because this is what you will face in a way, of course. Like I got a totally different socialization, and I think this is the quality psychotherapists, psychiatrists should have if they work in a clinical setting anyhow. And I don't know, Mayes, maybe you...
Yeah. In our organization, we also offer such a training. We do training for professionals, for police, for social workers, for therapists. It's exactly about this culture education, and I find it really important and really powerful. And through also this education that we do, this conversation, we get a lot also like from for the experiences that I am doing. For example, I just remember that once with the police we had like also such a discussion about also culture, religion, Islam, and a lot of different things. And they said that for them they see that a lot of people, they end up in jail, but they think they just needed a place in a mental health institution. And because they could not find a place and there's no interpreters, they do another problem, and they have this Anzeige. What is Anzeige in English?
Anzeige, announcement? No, or I don't know.
From the police.
Something from the police.
Police?
Yes, something. And they get it again. They ended up in jail, for example, and they think that all of this should have just not happened. because they should have just found a place and got therapy, you know. And it's not really in the tema. I'm sorry, but I just like remembered through this training that we're doing with professionals that this is also something that they talked about, and they really highlighted it.
Well, let me move on to the next question. And I mean, that is about hope, basically. I mean, Christina was asking it. This morning, someone mentioned hope is one of the aspects regarding expectations for today. What gives you hope in your work, and what gives your clients hope?
Question for Mice, I think, definitely.
I would say what gives me hope, I just talked about it when I was like in the other room about female perspective. I said, it gives me hope when I feel like, when I get to know amazing women, and I feel like though they have so much struggles or traumas, and they suffered so much, they are so strong, and they are so amazingly powerful, and they're trying to move on in life, and they're trying to get the best out of it, and that gives me a lot of hope, actually. And also, when I feel like I could talk with Syrians from different political backgrounds, from religious backgrounds, we could talk about politics or any other controversial subject, and that we can actually have a common ground. That's very also, that gives me a lot of hope. And what gives them hope? I feel like this togetherness, that they are not alone in this, that they are with each other, that we are all together, that there's still, I believe in good in people, and I think when we are like together trying to do the best for each other, then there's also this belief that there's something good in this life to struggle for and to do, I guess. Yeah.
I think we can very much agree with what Mai said. I hear quite a lot from people coming. It gives me hope to be able to talk to you again. You give me some form of a perspective, even if you can't solve problems like immediately. But there's somehow hope again to get out of it, to not be alone with it. And sometimes when somebody calls me maybe 2 years later, I think, oh, maybe there's a crisis. No, I just wanted to call you to tell you I'm fine, and ask you how you are. And I'm asking about the children and the work. And then this gives hope. Yeah, it gives hope. That something has been working, and there's a future also.
Well, thank you so much. I think I don't see any more questions, and I believe, hope is always a good ending point, despite all hardships we discussed. Thank you three so much for your really insightful participation. And again, sorry that Ersin couldn't make it, but I hope you all enjoyed our session as much as I did. Thank you.
So yes, you did. And Mais, I just wanted to tell you, if we should get in closer contact in a way, don't hesitate to contact us. You have our email address and so on.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
That are the meaningful
concerning the network.
We aim to create here. So of course, that's true for anyone else as well. I mean, if you want to get in touch with others from who participated here in these 2 days, just get in touch with the organizers, and that's great. Let's have maybe a little wrap up and look at the main points that we discussed during these 2 days. I mean, yesterday, I think the main takeaways were that meeting basic needs and protection is crucial. I think we can all agree on that, and that interpersonal and environmental dynamics continuously impact the mental health situation. Then trust came up repeatedly. It was very important yesterday, but also in many of the sessions that we had today. In different ways. I mean, of course, also finding the right balance of closeness and distance for mental health providers. but also, of course, overcoming stigma and gender aspects and boundaries, setting boundaries, of course, as well. And that it's really key to install and maintain a feeling of agency for people affected. So today, then we shifted the focus a little bit, and we listened to the personal stories of two Syrians in Germany, Razan and Abdullah, and learned about issues of accessibility to basic needs like housing, jobs, languages, and language issues, of course, that the acceptance of certificates can be an issue, that they made discriminatory experiences while living in Germany, but also about their personal growth and effective support offerings and self-help, and how such offerings could be promoted better as well. And then we moved on to the breakout sessions today. We talked about female perspectives, where it was emphasized that racism needs to be tackled more, that the state needs to make sure that women are able to participate and that they are not isolated in their life in their new homes. So access to language courses, for example, is very crucial there. And of course, funding. And we heard that quite often. Then we looked at the legal situation, and it was emphasized that in Germany, it is often the unclear status that is an issue here. While, there's a suspension on the ban, or like the ban of, to send people back to Syria was lifted temporarily, and other issues. And many people in Germany are on temporary statuses, so their status is not settled. While in Turkey, access to work was identified as a main issue when it comes to the legal situation of Syrian refugees. And of course, all of that has a huge impact on mental health. So then we talked about COVID, and we kind of found out that it exacerbated a lot of the existing issues that were already affecting mental health of refugees, but it also created a couple of new ones, especially multiple new daily stressors because of the COVID situation. Not being able to visit relatives, and limited contact, loneliness, basically, all that. And then in the last breakout session, we talked about the question whether there is one unified community of Syrians, and kind of learned that the Syrian communities are very, very much reflecting the melting pot that Syria was and is to a certain regard, and that there are several communities existing. And then, we just talked about the obstacles and meaningful connectors here in the last panel. And we talked about the importance of family links. We talked about generational issues, about locational issues, differences between smaller cities, rural areas, and metropolitan areas. Again, we talked about funding and the need of destigmatization, and of course, language-specific aspects. That's it from my side. I hope you took as much from this as I did, and I would like to thank you all for participating, for sharing stories, for connecting with each other, which is one of the goals of this event. And of course, thank you. And thank you also to the organizers and the technical staff. Have a good Saturday afternoon. Thank you.